Good morning, Williams class. For your maths lesson today, the arithmetic is on the screen. So the questions are as follows. 9 times 5, 24 times 6. What is 670 as a Roman numeral? What number is next in the sequence? 75, 125, 175. 3 times 6. 72 divided by 9. Half of 400. 4,353 plus 2,110. 2,387 take away 1,237. 108 divided by 12. So pause this video, have a go at the arithmetic questions, and when you unpause, we will go through the answers. So the answers are as follows. 9 times 5 equals 45. 24 times 6 equals 144. What is 670 as a Roman numeral? DCLXX. What number is next in the sequence? 75, 125, 175, 225. 3 times 6 equals 18. 72 divided by 9 equals 8. Half of 400 equals 200. 4,353 plus 2,110 equals 6,463. 2,387 take away 1,237 equals 1,150. 108 divided by 12 equals 9. So, our learning objective for today's maths lesson is, can I explain what a unit and a non-unit fraction is? So by the end of today's lesson, you will know how to find a fraction of a value. Value is another word for number. So what can you remember about fractions? Now you may have to think back to year 2, which is when you first learnt about fractions, or when you last learnt about fractions for some of you. So here is our fraction, 1 over 4. Now the amount that we are looking for is the numerator. So this is our numerator. I'm going to write it actually just so you can tell the difference. So the number at the top is numerator. And then the number at the bottom is our denominator. So in this case, 1 out of 4, what do you think that's telling us? 1 out of 4. If you were to look at this picture here of the 4 counters, 1 of them is green, 3 of them is red. What is 1 out of 4 telling us? It's telling us that 1 counter out of the 4 counters is the colour green. So that is one example of a fraction. Over here, we have a new fraction, 3 out of 4. So here it says 3 out of 4 are red. And that is true. If you look at the picture, you can see that 3 counters out of the 4 counters are red. When our numerator, which is the top number, when that number is bigger than 1, and the denominator is a whole number, so there's no decimal numbers, it's just a number, we call this fraction a non-unit fraction. So that happens, non-unit fraction is when this number at the top is bigger than 1. And it is bigger than 1 because it is 3. So that is called a non-unit fraction. Here we have another fraction, 1 out of 4. 1 out of 4 are green, which is true. If you look at the picture here, you have 1 counter out of the 4 counters being the colour green. When our numerator is equal to 1, so when our numerator is 1 and the denominator is a whole number, we call it a unit fraction. So a unit fraction is when the numerator, the number at the top, is always 1. That would be a unit fraction. So that's the difference between unit and non-unit. Let's try and write fractions here to complete the sentences. Part A, blank of the counters are yellow. So can you tell me what fraction we would put there? If you wrote or said 1 out of 3, then you are absolutely correct, because one counter out of the 3 counters in total, remember we've got 1, 2, and 3 counters. So one of them out of the 3 are yellow. What about part B then? How many of the counters are red? 2 out of 3, because 2 of the counters out of the 3 counters are red. Now, which one of these fractions is a non-unit fraction? Which one? 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 3? Which one would you say is a non-unit fraction? It would be 2 out of 3, because a non-unit fraction is any fraction that has the top number being more than 1. Remember what we call a fraction that has a numerator equaling to 1. We call that a unit fraction. So part A has a fraction that's a unit fraction. Part B has our non-unit fraction. Your turn. Write fractions to complete the sentences. Part A, how much of the tower is green? Part B, how much of the tower is yellow? And part C, how much of the tower is blue? Have a go now. Okay, part A. If you said that 3 out of 3, 4, 5, 6, if you said 3 out of 6 of the tower is green, you are correct, because 1, 2, 3 cubes out of the 6 cubes in total are green. Part B, how much of the tower is yellow? 2 out of 6, because 2 cubes out of the 6 cubes is yellow, or are yellow. And part C, how much of the tower is blue? 1 out of 6, because there are 6 cubes in total and 1 of them is blue. Next question here, we have part A, which, or not even which, what is a unit fraction? What is a non-unit fraction? Talk about it with a partner. So here you have to define what a unit and a non-unit fraction is. So what I would write if I was doing this question would be a unit fraction has a numerator of 1. And then I would write a non-unit fraction has a numerator greater than 1. So that's how I would define it. Part B, complete the sentences. An example of a unit fraction is, what would you say is an example of a unit fraction? Your answers can be very different to your partner's or to somebody else's answers, so don't worry if they're different. What would you say is an example of a unit fraction? I would say, just off the top of my head, 1 out of 7 is an example of a unit fraction, because the numerator is always 1. So it's easy to come up with an example for that. Now, an example of a non-unit fraction is, come up with an example. I'm going to say 4 out of 5. The numerator is always greater than 1. So that is a way of finding out what a non-unit fraction would be. The numerator, which is our number at the top of the fraction, is always bigger than 1 for a non-unit fraction. Whereas a unit fraction always has the top number, the numerator, being 1. Let's try this question. What fraction of each shape is shaded? So let's work with part A first. What fraction of this shape is shaded? Have a go at answering that. It would be 1 out of, how many parts do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it'd be 1 out of 5, because 1 slice out of 5 slices has been shaded. What about the second shape? How much of that shape has been shaded? 3 slices out of 5 have been shaded. Part B, we have a circle picture here. So how much has been shaded there? Look at how much has been shaded and then look at how many parts we have in total. It would be 1 out of 3. And try this one. How much of that is shaded? 2 out of 3, because you have 2 that have been shaded, and then all together we have 3 parts. So the total number of parts goes at the bottom, and the number that goes at the top as our numerator is how much has been shaded. Your turn. Tell me how much of these shapes, what fraction basically would you write for each of these shapes? Have a go for me. Let's see if you got the same as me. So for the first one, I would say that 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 out of 6 has been shaded there. You'll have to forgive the fact that I've written outside of the boxes. It's far too small for Miss Gulzar. What about here? How much of the shape has been shaded? I would say 1 out of 6 has been shaded. I've seen how much has been coloured in, and then I've also totaled up how many parts we have all together. Next one, how much has been shaded here? I can see there's 1 coloured in triangle out of how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 out of 4 has been shaded there. And what about here? I can see 2 being shaded out of how many altogether? 1, 2, 3, there are 4 triangles altogether. So 2 out of 4 have been shaded there. Right, now, time for your independent work. Question 1, part A. Colour 1/5 of each shape. Have a go at doing that for me. Part B then, by the way, before you pause the video and continue, part B as well says colour 3/5 of each shape, colour 3 out of 5. And then what I would like for you to do is tell me what is the same and what is different about your answers. Off you go. Welcome back. So your pictures should look a little something like mine. For part A, it says to colour 1/5 of each shape, 1 out of 5 of each shape. So for part A, every single shape here has 5 parts, and you had to colour 1 part of each one, which is what I've done here. I've coloured in 1 triangle here, 1 rectangle here, and 1 rectangle there. For part B, it was we had to colour in 3 out of 5 of each shape. So that's what I've done here. I've coloured in 3 parts here, 3 parts here, and 3 parts here. Now, in terms of what is the same and what is different about my answers, one similarity that I found is the number of total parts, also known as the denominator. So for both part A and part B, there were 5, the shapes were cut into 5 parts. But what's different about those answers is the numerator. So that means how much I was shading in. Because how much did I shade in for part A? How many parts did I have to shade in? 1. And how many parts did I have to shade in for part B? 3. So that is what is different about my answers. Now we're going to try this question. This is asking you to write the fractions in the table. So you've got one part of the table labeled as unit fractions and one part of the table labeled as non-unit fractions. So write these fractions where they belong. Off you go. Right, 1 out of 6 would be a unit fraction. Now remember, unit fractions are any fractions that which have the top number, the numerator, as 1. So that would be 1 out of 6. Let's move on to 2 out of 3. That would be non-unit because the top number is not 1. 3 out of 4, that would also be non-unit. 1 out of 10, that would be unit. 1 out of 8, that would also be unit. 3 out of 5, that would be non-unit. 1 out of 4, that would be unit. 1 out of 99, unit. 6 out of 1, non-unit. And 1 out of 250, unit. So write 2 more examples of your own in each column. Now I'm going to see what you write. If I had to write something, I would say for unit fraction, I would put 1 out of 3 and 1 out of 9. And then for my non-unit, I would put 4 out of 7, and I would put 5 out of 25. So those would be my 2 examples. What would your examples be? That is it for our maths lesson for today, Williams class. Really, really well done for how hard you have worked. And I will see you very soon in our next lesson.